One of the most widely shared opinions in the Evil Dead community is that the Puppeteer sucks. Like, a lot. It's not even close to being as good as the Warlord or the Necromancer. But by the end of this video, I'm going to help you change your mind about the Puppeteer in a way that you didn't even realize existed in the game. We're not going to just go ahead and possess an elite and then do lightning, possess an elite and do lightning, because frankly, that's super easy to dodge, and if you run into survivors that know how to play, you're screwed. I'm going to teach you some stuff you probably didn't know. So, one of the things we have to address if we're going to make the Puppeteer feel like it doesn't suck so much is take a look at the things that suck. So, one of the things that sucks about the Puppeteer is this terrible animation that they have. Take a look. So we can sit here and do 1, and then 2, and then 3, and then 4. And at the end of it, we do this weird yell. And for some reason, you just have to get that out of your system. And during that time, you are extremely vulnerable to attacks from the survivors. Same thing with the heavy attacks. I can sit here and what I think after 3 of these, I'll do this weird chest beating animation. And then again, you are just completely vulnerable and it slows down your ability to keep up with the survivors. So the way you don't have to deal with that is you have to use a specific combo when you fight. And don't worry, it's not complicated. It is just 3 light attacks and then a heavy attack. So light, and then light, and then light, and then a heavy. And that's it. You'll dodge it forever. And you can keep doing that, by the way. So I sit here and go light, and then light, and then light, and then a heavy. But then I can just start it over again. So go light, and then a light, and then a light, and then a heavy. Don't got to worry about it. Now, something to keep in mind with that heavy attack is it looks like 2 swipes. Well, it's because it is. So you're going to be getting 5 attacks in, which is actually really nice when we start talking about the other thing with Puppeteer that you may or may not know, is that they actually have a hidden bleed effect. You don't see this in the description at all. But you see how there's 2 different ways to possess your creature here? You can either do the basic possess, which, by the way, this is one of the reasons why Puppeteer stinks, is that their possession costs 40 on a basic unit, where the Warlord and the Necromancer only cost 20. But you also have this thing called the power possess. Now, this power possess here is by far the thing that you need to learn the most about. So if you go ahead and you click power possess, a lot of different things are going to happen. If you go ahead and rewind the video a little bit, after I possessed the demon before, or the deadite here before, you might have seen that the trickle on the bottom of the screen was going much faster than it is now. However, when you power possessed, that is much slower. In fact, it's so much slower that once we reach the skill tree part of this video, you'll notice that you can actually gain energy more than you lose when you power possess. Another thing to know about the power possession that you might not know is you see this mist coming out of me? That is the sign that you have something power possessed. So if you're playing Survivor, take a look for that mist. That means that the Puppeteer is doing a power possession, okay? Another thing that seems like it might suck about the Puppeteer is their basic unit skills. Take a look. You have the ability to die, which is incredibly easy to dodge, by the way, because there is a huge wind-up animation. Any survivor in the game knows how to dodge that one. And then the other skill on the basic unit is that you can rip off your head and then die. Also, seems like it sucks. However, if you happen to know the technique that I call the Dan Slam, because I was taught this technique by a viewer called Danakun in my chat, thank you, Danakun, I'm going to show you something about the Dan Slam that is absolutely incredible and is going to change everything you think about the Puppeteer. I promise you. In fact, let me show you this clip right here. I'm going to rip my head off. So how do you consistently perform a Dan Slam? It's pretty easy. You just go ahead and rip your head off. Which, by the way, you can run around without your head for a while. It's like 18 seconds or something like that. And then you go charging in, and then if the survivors group up on top of you, which, by the way, you just pay attention to see if they've been doing that. Once they group up on top of you, you just throw your head on the ground by pressing 2 again, and you'll see that you do a ton of damage. Take a look at how much health that book just lost in one chunk. Now, this is the tutorial book, so it has a little bit less HP than typical, but that is a huge hit coming out of a basic unit. Now, as a survivor, you might be a little worried, like, oh my god, how do I dodge that? That is so much damage, and it takes out almost the entire health bar of some of my teammates. Don't worry. The ways you counter it are plenty. The ways you counter it are do a little bit of dismembering on the basic unit, because you can't rip your head off unless you have both your hands. Another way to counter it is just get out of the way. I mean, frankly, I don't think it's that hard to figure out. If somebody came running at me without their head attached, I would also try to get out of the way. So just use your, like, basic survival instincts. You'll be just fine. Also, if you happen to break the balance bar after their head is ripped off, I don't think they can throw their head anymore. Another streamer named Alucard did a little bit more testing with this, and something you can do to kind of speed up this whole animation is press 2 and then 1 right away, and what that will do is it will cause damage to the survivors around you. It's a much reduced level of damage compared to just going through the whole act of having your head go to the ground and then the animation finally times out here like this. You do way less damage if you try to circumvent it by pressing self-destruct right away, but it is a way to get a quick chunk of damage off if you need to. A few more things to talk about here with the Puppeteer before we get into the skill tree. Something you need to acknowledge when you play the Puppeteer is that their upgrade tree looks very different than the other two demons. If you'll take a look here, the Infernal Energy does not have a point where it starts regenerating energy passively until level 5, so it takes a while to get there. So that means you need to think about playing the Puppeteer a bit differently. Typically when I play Puppeteer, and I do this whole basic unit strategy, is I prioritize putting 2 points into traps right away, not 3, because then we start getting elite units. Unless you want to play with elite units, that is something you still can do. It really depends on if they're any good at dodging on the survivor side. But I tend to put 2 points into traps, and then I slowly go ahead and I put a point into basic in case I need to spawn basic units, and then I start to prioritize either possession or boss, depending on if I'm attacking a lot with basics or if I really want to get Eligos going. Once I can finally reach the point where I have 5 points available to put into Infernal Energy, then I tend to rush Infernal Energy so I can get myself some passive energy regeneration. Because the way that you play Puppeteer is a totally different mindset. Warlord is just crazy economy. The Necromancer also has a pretty nutty economy just because things are so cheap. Your units aren't going to get super cheap on the Puppeteer. Ever. Not in a possession standpoint or from a summoning standpoint. Really, the way things are cheap is when you go ahead and consider your power possession. And again, something to know about the power possession is, 1, it's free, but it also causes this bleed attack. So when you hit a survivor, you cause bleed damage. And then if you go through this full combo like this, you can very easily be doing 25 damage per second to the survivors, which bleeds out pretty quickly on some of these survivors. Another thing to keep in mind with this power possess is that, again, a different way of playing. Since I went ahead and used my power possession, once I leave my power possession, you'll see that my cooldown on my power possess has been going the entire time I've been in the possession. Okay? Keep that in mind when we go over to our skill tree, because part of how you're going to want to play is use your power possess as much as you can, but don't feel like you have to wait for the entire cooldown every time, because the cooldown begins as soon as you jump into a Deadite. It's not after you're out of the Deadite. So a lot of the time, if you're in one of your units for a while, you get some overlap, which makes it feel way less painful. Another thing to talk about here is Eligos himself, the boss. So, Eligos has a very different boss leveling up system compared to some of the other bosses in the game. One of the things you'll notice that makes him so different is that he has a huge cooldown reduction. Way more than what Henrietta and Evil Ash offer. So use Eligos a lot once you have him leveled up all the way, simply because his cooldown is ridiculous. Another cool trick about Eligos here, or actually a couple of tricks. These are things that I learned that I didn't put into my initial video where I was talking about the numbers on Eligos. So, something you should be doing when you play Eligos is moving, because when you're invisible like this, you hardly take any damage. It's very hard for the survivors to hit you. Use this as a way to delay the survivors. I think a lot of people, when they play boss, they think that they just gotta absolutely clobber the survivors. You don't have to do that. I know your comfort zone is to attack them while they're on a possession point like the Pages or the Kandarian Dagger, but you should be using Eligos pretty much anytime you can, and then make it so you really just drag out anything they're trying to do. The Puppeteer is meant to be played in a way where you're just draining the time out of the survivors. Some other things to know about Eligos here is this one attack. This can actually knock people out of a finisher. Typically, you're invincible with iframes during a finisher. However, Eligos' #1 attack here can knock people out of that. And if you watch the numbers video we did before, know that this does about 60 damage, his light attacks, but his heavy attacks actually do like, boom, 200 damage. It's a slow wind up and it leaves you vulnerable, but it does do a lot of damage. And the last thing to keep in mind with Eligos here is his rock attack. A lot of people think this rock attack ain't that great, and that was including me until I learned something really huge about it a couple of days ago. So take a look at the rock attack here. You pick up a rock and then you toss it, and then hopefully you hit the survivors when you throw your rocks. Something to know about this rock attack, though, is that it does a ton of damage to any survivor that is right next to you when you cast it. It seems like a long-range attack, but it has way more power up close, because all of these little rocks that you see coming into you, a lot of those rocks count as a huge chunk of damage that you can do to the survivors. It is remarkable how much damage that attack does. I had no idea until I accidentally did it.
End their lives.
So just be a pest with Eligos. You don't have to sit here and save him for any big moment. Just use him early and use him often. And one other thing to keep in mind that's a little hard to illustrate here in the tutorial because I don't have a survivor here, but you know how we talked about how the economy for the Puppeteer is a little rough because it takes a while to get this regeneration going? Keep in mind that you have this charge skill, and this charge skill is a great way to go ahead and get a ton of infernal energy if you happen to nail it on a survivor. This doesn't just have to be a thing to raise the survivor's spear. Use it to generate some energy for yourself. Now, one of the things I know people are going to ask about here is the skill tree. I'm going to explain why we do what we do with the skill tree. I think that is much more valuable than just copying this, because if you don't understand why we're doing things, it's useless. But real quick, let's talk about the other unit here, the elite unit. I don't want to talk too much about the elite unit because I'm sure you've seen a lot about it anyway, but a really easy way to go ahead and use these elite units is to just press your one skill and hope that the survivors are bad at dodging, because it's a big AoE, and if the survivors tend to be all clumped up, every single AoE that surrounds each one of the survivors can stack on top of themselves, and you can do massive damage because of it. Okay? But again, if you go up against a good survivor team, these elite units on the Puppeteer lose a lot of their luster, so I'm not too concerned with them. It's nice that they're resistant to range damage, but it kind of doesn't matter. One of the things to note right away when you look at the skill tree is that there's nothing inside of these upgrades here that mentions anything about the bleed damage, but just keep in mind that if you're using a power possession, aka your Q ability, that causes an extra amount of bleed damage on the survivors, and it can get pretty significant if you really start stacking up your hits in a row. So let's start going over the parts of the skill tree that I personally think are the most important parts that we focus on. One of the big things is that we just try to make it so our energy is in a better spot, because the energy is always kind of a pain point for the Puppeteer, so we put some points down in here. The other big ones here are the cooldowns. You absolutely need to prioritize your cooldowns for the Puppeteer. So a really nice one here is the Tenacious Demonic Dash. By the way, say that 5 times real fast. It's a tongue twister. This takes your cooldown from 120 seconds on your charge skill all the way down to 90. And this is, again, kind of one of those economy things. It helps make it so you're putting more fear on the survivors, but also so you're regenerating more economy. Another big one in terms of cooldowns here is the Relentless Evil. This is a 30% cooldown reduction on your power possess. So 30% of 90, it brings it down to about a minute. So that means that once you get into your power possession, if you can hang out there for, I don't know, 30, 40 seconds, your next power possession is only going to be about 20 seconds away, which is an excellent way to go ahead and play the Puppeteer. You just want to keep chaining power possessions if you can. 2 more of these that I think are an absolute must are going to include the Puppet Master Invigorating Possession, which means that you gain infernal energy anytime you hit the survivors. So this is really nice to make it so that energy doesn't become a problem when you power possess, or even if you do a regular possession, this helps a lot with staving off the whole economy problem. Another really big one here is Scared to Death. This is how you go ahead and make the Puppeteer an excellent possessor. You need 50 energy to go ahead and possess a survivor, but they also have to be at their fear threshold. I think this is far more valuable than something like Night Terror right here, which reduces the fear threshold for the survivor units. Because, again, every single hit that you do jacks up their fear. And since now you know how to do the 1, 2, 3, 1, 2 with the triple light and heavy, you're getting 5 attacks out, and every single one of those is causing fear. And this makes it so easy to possess things really early in the game. And something to know about possessions is whenever you go ahead and possess a survivor, you get, what, I think 300 EXP, which is a great way to power level early in case you've been having trouble with that. So since you were going to be putting points into traps, that means that every single trap they run into is going to really skyrocket their fear. You could do things like evil trees, where you go ahead and trap the tree, let them run into it, and then possess the tree and double hit them. You can then possess the survivors a lot to raise your EXP. You don't even have to stay inside of the possession, by the way, with the survivor. In fact, a lot of times I'd recommend you don't early game. Go ahead, possess a survivor, and then see if they have a good weapon, or maybe you got a hunter and you can do some damage to the survivors. But a lot of times what you want to do is possess and get out. Because unless they have a shotgun or they're a hunter, you're just going to get all of your energy drained out of you as soon as the rest of the survivors start hitting you. So just use it as an opportunity to level up or to interrupt when somebody is doing. Now, I'm not sure if Demonic Demolition here contributes to the amount of damage that you do with the Dan Slam. I haven't had a chance to test it yet, and it's hard because you don't really see a number that pops up. I don't know, maybe because it's under the ground or what's going on because you throw your head down. It's hard to tell. Somebody go ahead and let me know in the comments down below if you're able to test this. But the ones that actually another really big one that I think is really important here is the scarier demonic dash, because again, you're trying to increase the amount of fear that the survivors take, especially since they start building up fear resistance as the game goes on with their pink Fs. Other than that, go ahead and put things where you want. This is what I have in my skill tree. I put basic unit damage, I put in basic unit damage, I put in Kandarian Fury to make it so that we can build more damage over time. By the way, this does cap out. This isn't infinite, so don't get too excited about Kandarian Fury. A little bit of balance bar resistance, a little bit more health. I just go big into basic units when I play the Puppeteer. But feel free to change it up as you like. I just wanted to tell you about some of the ones that I find must-haves when I play Puppeteer. So I hope this helps you a little bit when you're playing Puppeteer. Keep in mind with Puppeteer, you are not a tank. You are not meant to just sit here and eat a lot of damage like you do with a really heavy elite unit on the Warlord or the Necromancer, or maybe with one of your big tanky bosses. You are meant to mess with the minds of the people you are playing against. That's literally what the Puppeteer in the series is all about. He preys on the minds of the weak. That's Eligos' whole thing. He's like a total nerd. So go ahead and play with that style in mind. Use some of the tricks I showed you today, and I guarantee you the amount of success you have with Puppeteer is going to skyrocket, and you're at least going to have a lot more fun. Okay? So, if you want to talk more about the Puppeteer or any other strategies in the game, we stream just about every single night on twitch.tv/SwingPoynt. Link will be in the description and also the top comment. And if you found this video helpful, please consider subscribing down below. Thank you guys, and I'll see you in the next video that we do around here.